Alright guys, let's continue analyzing movements, biomechanics here with the Yoga app. Here is Juanjo and this is a ceiling. So what I'm going to analyze here is mainly how the angles of the elbows and hips are. I'll explain. Alright guys, here a line is drawn from the wrist to the shoulder, and what is measured here is the angle of the forearm in relation to the arm, meaning how much you bend your elbows. And here we can see when the left elbow bends and when the right elbow bends. And we will see here how much one really bends the elbows on a long ceiling. Another very interesting thing is that these lines represent both the shoulder girdle and the actual waist and the trunk line. So these 2 points you see down here are, in a way, where the femurs are inserted, and up here where the humerus is inserted. And how these 2 girdles move from one side to the other as Juanjo climbs. We will also analyze that here. Now here Juanjo continues climbing, and one of the things we see is that the elbows always remain straight. And here notice, both his shoulder girdle and his actual waist turn to the right when Juanjo reaches with his right hand. So this is one of the things I always tell my students. In a way, your hip guides your shoulder, and with that, the movement is maintained. It can't be the other way around. Your shoulder can't guide your hip. Generally, the hip is guided from the feet, okay? So in a way, when your hip turns to a place, your shoulders also have to turn to that place. What usually happens with climbers is that they try to turn their shoulders with a frozen hip that doesn't turn, and that can't be. In a way, the hip turns the entire trunk so that the shoulder goes to the hold where the hand is going. And here, following the movement, when Juanjo goes with his left hand, he turns his entire hip as well as his shoulder. Well, here we continue the movement, and one of the things you can teach the kids is that ceilings are thought to require a lot of arm strength. Oh, and no, not necessarily. Here, if you see, Juanjo goes with his arms practically straight all the time, and almost all the movements towards where he takes his hands are based on how he moves his hip. Obviously, he never lets his feet hang. He rests when he needs to rest and always turns and moves with his elbows completely straight in most of the steps. Here is Javiera doing the crux of a 7B sequence. She has been training with me for a year, and technically and gesturally, she is doing very well.
A short announcement. Finger strength and Tindeq course lasts 5 hours. Finger strength planning course lasts 7 hours. The videos are already recorded, so if you want them, you can buy and watch them immediately. And if you also want to train with me, just write to me on Instagram, whether it's for the Tindeq finger strength courses, finger strength planning, or if you want to train with me.
And here we are going to analyze this entire crux and how she does it and how well or poorly she does it too. So let's analyze it biomechanically here. And now here we are going to mark her center of mass, which are the red and yellow lines. And we will only mark her arms, okay? Because I want to see how stretched or not her arms are, and I want to see how her center of mass moves. First, she crosses, and if we see in line, her center of mass remains constant. There is no jump, and in fact she crosses and immediately goes to the other hold, which is super good. She doesn't stop the movement. She keeps it constant, and that means saving a lot by not having to make stops that drain energy. And then there are 2 steps upwards where she first has to adjust her feet. And notice that when she raises her feet, her legs are completely stretched. When she has to place the other foot, she raises both feet again. And when she pulls, her legs are almost 100% stretched again. And the other thing that is very, very subtle in this step, the one that comes now, is that she makes a small pendulum to reach the next hold. In this one, it is much more noticeable. Notice that she first pulls to the left and then to the right. What is she doing there? She's making a pendulum. Let's analyze it very carefully, as it's something I've taught my student a lot. She is in this position, lifts her left foot, lifts her right foot, and she knows she has to pull hard towards her left hand. So what she does is first pull her body to the right and then to the left. And the same pendulum effect that she created allows her to reach her left hold much better. And here we continue with the boulder. Now comes a very tough crossover. She does it very well, so it seems to come out easily for her. But on a micro pinch, she has to go to a crimp. I mean a good crimp, but not that good. She lets herself go a bit to control that swing she made. And here again, she makes a small pendulum to reach the last somewhat good crimp. And here what comes next isn't so bad, which is reaching a crimp with a hook. And that's where the crux of the route ends. And regarding footwork concerning her legs, notice that she is always well triangulated. And when she throws, here is an example. Here we see how her left leg is well positioned, her entire hip is shifted to the left and displaced to the left so that she can throw her entire torso to the left, because the hand that needs to grab is the left one, where all her weight is on the left hand, which is the leg that remains somewhat stretched, and the one that is supporting all her weight. And the next step is the opposite. Here she lifts her feet again, and what she does is pull again with her hip, pulling to the right, where her right leg is more stretched. She ends up bending to the right with her entire hip pushed to the right, because in fact here she has to go with the projection of her torso to the right, because she has to go with the hand. The hand that comes is precisely the right one, and in fact this was the hardest step, although it finally goes to a more or less good crimp, but the step itself is very tough. And here it's super interesting because she placed her left foot on a hold where she knows she'll have to pull with all her strength for the next move. The right leg is lifted onto whatever. The right leg is only going to guide, but the pivot is on her left leg. Notice here how her left leg remains absolutely rigid, and what it's doing is supporting all the weight on her left foot. And what her right leg did was simply guide the movement. The final move is relatively easy. She reaches a not so bad hold and goes to a hook hold where the crux of the route ends. It's about 6 moves out of a total of approximately 35. So here we see Gabby doing it all, finally. And here we have an analysis of how she climbed this. She has improved a lot, especially in technique and movement, because throughout this year we have focused a lot on technique and movement, which is what I am most concerned about with the people I am training, because although I talk a lot about finger strength here and there, I believe that climbing is ultimately trained, or the best way to train it is by climbing, but doing it well and knowing how to do it. Now we are going to analyze Pacifica here. She is doing the crux of a sequence that is a 7B. In fact, she has already climbed 7B on rock. And this crux consists of almost all slopers with some bumps. And besides being strong, one has to be very, very precise in how they position their center of gravity and their feet. And we are going to see here, analyzing it objectively with jogger. And here in the red line, what I just marked is the angle of the wall. This wall at this moment here has about 21 degrees, okay? And these two lines that I am marking on Pacifica's body, one is her torso, which is this line that goes straight here, and the other line is the 90 degrees with respect to the fall, that is plumb, okay? How her torso is with respect to the perpendicular of the ground. So based on this, we are going to see how her torso changes as she climbs. She starts with her torso, parallel to the inclination of the wall. She moves her feet up. And here it's super interesting because at the moment she goes to the next move, which is very hard, she throws her torso back and projects her whole body towards the wall to reach for the next hold, which is a very, very bad sloper. She stays very close to the wall and goes with her other hand to grab another very, very bad sloper. And here again she has to move her feet up. She's on a very bad sloper for her left hand and a very bad sloper for her right hand, and has to launch for a somewhat good crimp. She moves her feet up, keeps her torso as close to the wall as possible, okay? She looks up and again throws her torso back to catch a swing. But when she goes towards the crimp, bam, she puts her whole torso directly into the wall, parallel to it, so that all her vectorial force falls on her feet. And then here she continues doing the same. She goes back, forward, again back, forward, always staying as close to the wall as possible because there are many slopers. And here ends the sequence that we were analyzing. Let's analyze it again, but marking her center of gravity, which is this red line that will appear. And notice how her red line, her center of gravity, always stays away when she lifts her foot, but gets closer every time she reaches for the hold. It's clear there in the red line how her center of gravity moves away, gets closer, moves away, depending on whether she lifts her feet or reaches for a hold. Let's analyze more movements, guys. Here, what we are going to see is how the hip directs the hand. Here we mark the right hip and the left hand. Here we are making a lateral movement first. But when we go towards the hold, we can see here, I'm marking it for you, how the hip, framed by the yellow line, moves a bit upwards and to the right. But we also see how the movement of the hand it's at the same time and also upwards to the right. That is to say, both move at the same time, in the same direction. And that's how it should be. It can't be that many times you move the hip first and then the hand, or the hand first and then the hip, which only hinders the fluidity of the movement. And here Victor continues climbing, and in general his hip keeps moving. Here he moves it again, see? Also in this case, well, I lean to the left, but see how the hip moves. And here the same thing happens. That is here the path of the hip, of his right hip, although it is not very long, it does occur. It occurs at the same time as a large movement of his right hand from one hold to another. And in a way, this is also fluid, even though they are not the same number of movements, they do happen at the same time. Now let's go back. Here I marked his left hip and his left hand. And here I also want you to see it well. This is the movement we saw before, and here what he is going to do is move his left hip and his left hand violently, and both also at the same time. Here again we mark how the movement of his left hip in relation to the movement of his hand, they move at the same time, in the same direction, and at the same time. And this is fluidity. In a way, this is gesture. This is good gesturing on Victor's part. Well, here we are showing a bit. Victor climbs well. He has good technique and superb gesture, okay? He has gained it in these times that he has been training with me. And in a way, these movement analyses serve to help people understand how to improve their technique, how to mainly improve their gesture, and to continue improving in terms of climbing. And now, guys, I remind you that the best way to improve in climbing is by climbing, but mainly by focusing on technique and gestures and being very attentive, in my case with my students, to ensure everyone does it perfectly, perfectly. So I hope I have helped you a bit more. And a hug, guys. Bye-bye.